From NJPBS Studios, this is NJ Spotlight News with Brianna Venozzi.
Hello, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Joanna Gagos. Brianna Venozzi is off. A few stories we'll get into later in the broadcast. New Jersey and New York file suit against the federal government to unfreeze gateway funds. We'll talk to the acting Attorney General, Jennifer Davenport, about the lawsuit. And President Trump signed the spending bills and ended the partial government shutdown on Tuesday, but the fight to reform DHS isn't over. We'll get you the latest. And later, with dozens of candidates running for Congress, we'll look at how the races are shaping up. But first, a few of today's top headlines. The Trump administration is being sued yet again over the frozen Gateway Tunnel funds, this time by the states of New Jersey and New York that filed a lawsuit late Tuesday in the Southern District of New York. They allege the U.S. Department of Transportation is illegally withholding $15 billion in federally committed funds for the Gateway Rail Tunnel project, funds that have already been appropriated by Congress. The two states are seeking emergency relief, asking the court to force the feds to resume payments immediately. Without that relief, all work on the project will have to stop completely on Friday, according to officials who say they've already exhausted all options to keep funding the project. That'll mean the immediate loss of 1,000 jobs. Now, the Trump administration says they froze the money to conduct a compliance review over the state's DEI policies and the contracting process. But Governors Sherrill and Hochul, along with their attorneys general, argue the DOT's decision to suspend funding was a political move to punish the president's rivals. This latest lawsuit comes just one day after the bi-state agency overseeing the massive infrastructure project also sued the Trump administration for breach of contract over the funding freeze. We'll talk with acting AG Jennifer Davenport later in the show, but here's a bit of what Governor Sherrill had to say today.
This is about jobs. This is about our economy. 1,000 people already at work could be responsible for almost 100,000 jobs in the region, about $20 billion of economic activity. And so it's not just about the economy, it's also about people's lives. The almost 200,000 commuters a day that take the tunnel into the city.
And energy affordability has been listed as one of the key priorities of the Sherrill administration. This week, the Board of Public Utilities, the state agency that oversees the energy industry, is asking the 4 utility companies to share how it could be more efficient. Now, those 4 companies, Atlantic City Electric, JCP&L, PSE&G, and Rockland Electric Company, have until March 5th to respond with information about how new energy connections could come online or how existing interconnections could be improved. BPU President Christine Gould-Sadovi says addressing interconnection challenges is critical to lowering costs and getting clean energy online faster, and that this is the first step toward advancing the goals laid out in Sherrill's first 2 executive orders, which she signed as one of her first actions as governor. The companies told us in separate statements they're each looking forward to working with the administration to make electricity bills more affordable for residents and to find new solutions to the growing demands on the industry brought on by data centers. Also, protests against ICE enforcement have continued here in the state, including one in Bloomfield Tuesday, where hundreds of high school students walked out of class and marched to Town Hall in support of families whose loved ones have been detained or deported and in protest of ICE tactics. Joined by community members, they held signs that read, "No human is illegal," and "Abolish ICE." Meanwhile, the Department of Homeland Security Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin responded to our requests for comment about this weekend's ICE operation in Jersey City, saying the Jersey City Police Department was notified about the operation, a claim that a spokesperson for the city denies. DHS also says it was a targeted immigration enforcement operation that resulted in the arrests of 10 individuals. They say those apprehended included, quote, multiple illegal aliens who committed felonies by illegally re-entering the U.S. All 10 illegal aliens will remain in ICE custody pending removal. Now, Hoboken Mayor Emily Jabbour told NJ Spotlight News that at least 3 of the people arrested worked in Hoboken businesses, and there was no evidence that any of them had outstanding criminal warrants. Coming up, we talk with Acting Attorney General Jen Davenport about New Jersey's attempt to end the Gateway Tunnel funding freeze. That's next.
Funding for NJ Spotlight News provided by the members of the New Jersey Education Association, making public schools great for every child, and RWJ Barnabas Health. Let's be healthy together.
And as we reported earlier in the show, Governor Mikey Sherrill held a press conference today to announce the lawsuit brought by New Jersey and New York against the Trump administration over its freezing funds for the Gateway Tunnel project. Now, leading that lawsuit is New Jersey's acting Attorney General Jen Davenport, who joins us now in the studio. So great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Joanna.
Why has the state, together with New York, brought this lawsuit?
So as you said, there's the freezing of billions of dollars of federal funds for this tunnel project, and we argue and allege that it was done unlawfully. And it's really important to make sure that this project, the most critical infrastructure project in our country, continues to go forward. So we're standing up for the residents to say we need this money, we need to keep this going, and the reasons why they've said that it's happening are just pretextual. It's really about politics, and we need to have this project go forward.
What are the harms that New Jersey in particular is facing with the freezing of these funds?
So we learned last week that the funds cannot continue past this Friday, 2 days from now. After February 6th, work has to stop. There's no more money to keep it going.
The funds ran dry.
The funds will run dry Friday. So what that means is up to 1,000 workers by Friday, thousands more if it continues to be unfunded. And beyond that, we have active sites that if this work doesn't continue, we have active construction sites that we have to make sure that we protect for public safety and public health to make sure those are protected. And if they're not active construction sites because the money's not there, then we have to do that without anything moving forward. And that's a real concern for us.
We've reported quite a bit on what it would cost, not just the fact that we're losing the funds, that the funds have been frozen, but what it would cost if the project comes to a halt and then has to restart. Do you have a sense of what that could cost New Jersey?
I don't have the exact numbers, no, but we're talking about millions of dollars that have gone in already to keep this active, and it's just going to compound if we have to put even more in for it not happening, as well as the fact that what it's going to cost to just keep it as just an inactive construction site.
Right, you'd have to go back out to bid to these construction companies, right, these development companies. Why file a separate lawsuit? Because we reported and we know that the Gateway Development Corporation filed its own lawsuit. Why file this second suit?
Because there's harm to Gateway, of course, and they filed that. They had a contract with the federal government, and they filed that contractual claim. New Jersey and New York didn't have a contract, but that doesn't mean we weren't harmed, and that we aren't going to be harmed, and aren't continuing to be harmed here. So our claims are different because it's not contractual, but the harms for us, again, are the thousands, the jobs that are lost, the money that is being spent and will continue to be spent, and what will happen for us for public health, public safety if this doesn't go forward.
You mentioned that you believe this is political. The Trump administration says it's investigating the state's DEI policies when going out to bid on these projects. You dispute that?
So we've had different reasons over time as to why the funding is no longer there. And that's what we're saying is there's rules that the government has to follow, the Administrative Procedure Act. And A, they didn't follow their own rules, and B, when they gave reasons, those were unlawful, and what they did was unlawful. So yes, we do dispute that. The reasons that were given at first, then this shifted and changed over time, and what we would argue is any of them are pretextual, because we've heard exactly what the president said out of his own mouth, that it is up to him, and he said that Democrats are foolish, and those are the reasons that we allege as to why this is really happening.
And again, those funds are congressionally appropriated already.
The funds were there, and the work was continuing. It was only back in the fall when that stopped to say the funds are no longer going to be allowed to go forward.
You are asking for immediate relief. This was filed in the Southern District of New York. How quickly do you believe you can get this before a judge?
So a judge has already been assigned. We sued yesterday, and what we're asking for is by Friday, we're asking the court for a temporary restraining order to say, for 14 days, can you please let this funding continue? Allow the funding to be reinstated so that we can have the work continue. And then beyond that, we're asking for other preliminary relief to have it continue throughout the pendency of the case.
If this were to be ruled on by Friday, does the work continue? Does the project continue as is? We already know that portions of it have slowed down.
So So on Friday, what we're asking for the court to do is, if the court were to say on Friday, we're going to take a look at what you filed already, and for 14 days, yes, you can continue this work, we would have the funds then to be able to continue that if the court were to order it.
Beyond that 14 days, how quickly do you believe the state could see relief?
I don't have an immediate answer. That is up to the court, but we're going to keep pressing forward to make sure that we get this and really mitigate the harm to New Jersey and New York.
Of course, you are waiting for confirmation, but I'm just curious, how do you see your role in these types of cases in terms of taking on the Trump administration?
So when I take a look at what's most important as an acting attorney general, and then if I am fortunate enough to be confirmed the Attorney General of the state, is to protect the state of New Jersey. And public safety is the most important thing that the acting Attorney General or the Attorney General can do. And when I take a look at what's happening to our residents, and the threat coming from Washington or otherwise, that's an important piece of it. And by that, I mean, when there are attacks, I think of a couple of things. And this is true whether it's coming from the federal government, corporate wrongdoers, or anything criminal. You think about, was something unlawful? Did it happen? Is it unlawful? And second, is it harming New Jersey? And those are the two factors that guide me. So in this case, is it unlawful? We allege yes. Is it harming the residents of New Jersey? Yes. So those are going to be the two factors that drive us forward.
All right. Well, we're going to be watching to see how this plays out in the courts. Acting Attorney General Jennifer Davenport, thank you so much for coming into the studio.
Thank you, Joanna. Good to be here.
On Tuesday, President Trump signed a package of spending bills to end the partial government shutdown that started this weekend. The battle played out in Congress over one of the bills that funds DHS, the Department of Homeland Security. But lawmakers aren't out of the woods completely because the agreement reached only funds the department through next Friday. Our Washington, D.C. correspondent Ben Hulak is with us now to talk through what was agreed to and what comes next. Ben, good to see you. Tell us, we know Democrats demanded a lot of reforms for DHS. They wanted all of that in this spending bill. What was agreed to?
Well, this is punting. This is Congress doing what it does pretty darn well, which is punt a problem down the road. So the end of that road is, as you pointed out, the end of next week. It basically, from now until next Friday, Congress is going to be feverishly deciding what to do to fund and to set the rules and guidelines of how DHS operates. So as we've talked about before, for viewers, the agency broadly is funded for years and years. It got a big chunk of money under this federal law from last summer. But what Democrats in particular are zeroing in on now is how to reform the agency. Chuck Schumer, the top Democrat in the Senate, and Hakeem Jeffries, the top Democrat in the House, today spoke with reporters and laid out their plan. They said, we're going to have a bicameral, meaning House and Senate, bill within the next day. And their broad demands are immigration agents should not be allowed in sensitive places. So that means schools, places of worship, polling places, critically. Masks have to come off, body cameras have to go on and have to be worn and have to actually be shooting useful footage. And the public should be able to sue. Those are the three broad demands. Now,
are they also asking for judicial warrants?
They are correct. That's another big demand. They're asking for judicial warrants. That falls in the category really of oversight. And most of these are non-starters with Republicans. This is especially the speaker here in the House. He has said masks can stay on, and he has rejected the idea of judicial warrants. Judicial warrants are warrants that a judge has agreed to. So
let me ask you this, Ben, because we know, as you said, that the funding goes through, I think, the end of 2029, right, through the president's term. They're asking for these reforms in terms of how ICE operates. Given the fact that those funds are already appropriated, can they see these reforms put into place immediately if some deal is reached, which we don't know if it will be?
We don't know if it will be, and it seems like there's a pretty narrow path to reach that deal now. But yes, there could be actually stricter reforms that are implemented across DHS and across immigration enforcement. Money is one thing, but policy enforcement is another. And federal agencies, like state agencies, operate on these sort of dual tracks. There's a money track, how much of the budget is coming and going, where is it being used? And then there's a policy track, which is how does this thing operate? So yes, there could actually be real serious changes if Congress can reach a deal, which, as I said, seems really like an uphill battle at this point. I should point out, though, that Republicans who hold both chambers of Congress, hold majorities in both chambers, they need Democratic votes in the Senate to get anything done. And Chuck Schumer came out today and said, what's happening in the streets is reminiscent of dictatorship. And they are entrenched. They are dug in at this point, Democrats, really across the board,
Yeah.
against DHS continuing as it has.
Are there any Republicans who have signaled that they could be on board with some of these reforms? We know that we have seen bipartisan concern over some of the activity that played out in Minneapolis. Has that translated into any members of Congress saying, yeah, I'd be on board with these reforms?
Not that we can see yet. I would note, after Alex Preddy, the former ICU nurse in Minnesota, was shot and killed by immigration agents, Jeff Van Drew, who represents the South Jersey seat, he initially had been very critical of Preddy, and not necessarily Preddy, but of protesters broadly against ICE, saying these are organized folks entering the streets and sort of gumming up the works. He then sort of softened his tone and said, people have rights to protest and rights to demonstrate, which was him really, I would say, walking back, or at least softening, modifying his stance. But the big action is going to be next week. What can the House pass? What can the Senate pass? That's when people will really be watching Congress closely on this.
We saw Senator Lindsey Graham have this kind of big, bold speech standing next to the president and a group of legislators before he signed the bill. He said that the federal government needs to force states to end sanctuary cities. There are a number of cities here in New Jersey that have said that they've signed executive orders saying that they will protect immigrants in various places. What do you think New Jersey could face from the federal government in terms of this effort to force that change?
It's really a symbolic statement to be a sanctuary city. There is no firm, uniform definition, I should say. Cities, municipalities, counties reach their own definitions. I think it's sort of a shot across the bow, reminiscent of how the Trump administration has gone after critics and left-leaning jurisdictions overall. If we think back to November, DOJ federally sent polling agents effectively to watch electoral polling sites during the November election. That might not have been actually anything nefarious. I wrote a lot about that in the fall, but it was a chilling effect, certainly. This folks are worried, Democrats are worried now that something could play out in the 2026 midterms this fall. And at a national scale, the president this week has been talking about how he wants to nationalize U.S. elections.
Yeah.
Now, that is not possible. That is not how our system works. But there is worry that especially ICE and CBP agents could be sent to polling places to scare away would-be voters.
Well, great insight. Appreciate you following this for us in Washington, D.C. Ben Hulack, thanks again.
Indeed.
Well, Democrats seem to be coming out of the woodwork these days, vying for a chance to hold a congressional seat. Right now, there are 3 majorly contested races. One is to replace former Congresswoman and now Governor Mikey Sherrill. One to fill outgoing Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman's seat. And one, an attempt to oust sitting Republican Congressman Tom Kean Jr. Now, as of this moment, there are a total of 38 candidates. It's a whole lot to talk about, so let's get into it with our senior writer and projects editor, Colleen O'Day, who's been tracking the races. Colleen, great to have you in the studio. Let's start in District 12, where we have outgoing Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman, and the largest number of candidates I've seen that I can remember, 17 Democrats, 2 Republicans. What do we have here?
Yeah, same for me. I have not seen this many candidates in my lifetime for a seat like that. You know, we know when a seat comes open. They don't come open that often, so people really do kind of come out of the woodwork. But certainly I think with the end of the party line balloting, that has encouraged more people to think, well, maybe I do have a shot, you know, people who wouldn't have thought it before. We still know that the party organizations are very powerful, so I'm not sure how much of a shot a lot of people have. But, I mean, you've got some doctors in the race, you've got children of immigrants, you've got some community organizers, we've got at least one Democratic socialist. We've got a whole panoply of people.
Okay, so to add to your thinking as to why so many are out, of course, I think Democrats are hopeful that there's a blue wave come midterms, right? And so they're looking for that type of support, maybe feeling encouraged that there's a strong chance for a Democrat to win. Of course, there's a Democrat already in that district holding that seat. But I want to talk about Sue Altman, who it seems is probably maybe the front runner in that race for Democrats. What's her history, and how do you think she plays against other candidates like Assemblywoman Verlina Reynolds Jackson, who's also in the race and a strong leader?
Yeah, so Sue came in late in the game, so to speak, right? I mean, Bonnie Watson-Coleman didn't give a lot of notice. Like we didn't know a couple of years ago that this was going to be her last term. But Sue just joined the race fairly recently. But you have to say that she goes to the top, or almost to the top of the pack. She's now Andy Kim's political state director. She's a former head of the Working Families Party in New Jersey. She's an activist. She ran for the 7th district seat. That's a different district. 2 years ago, lost to Tom Kean, but certainly got a lot of exposure in that way. So she is, I think, a force to be reckoned with. On the other hand, you've got a Verlina Reynolds Jackson, who is an assemblywoman. She's also the Mercer County Grants Administrator. She's already gotten the endorsement of many, if not most, Mercer County, big name officials, as well as some of her fellow legislators. She's been in the race a little longer. She's got some money going in. So she certainly, I think, is another strong candidate.
Something I think is interesting to point out that we've seen in this list of candidates is just how many people of color are running to replace a woman of color. And I wonder how you think that plays in CD12.
I mean, I think that's going to be important. I think that's something that voters will probably look at. The district, when it was drawn to include a lot of areas of color. It was changed so that it goes all the way up into Plainfield now, which it didn't usually.
And we do have the Plainfield mayor running.
And the Plainfield mayor is also running, person of color also running. But yes, and I think, and it goes down to Trenton, so it's quite a geographically long or twisting district. So I certainly think that any kind of loss of a person of color in Congress in a state that is as diverse as ours would not be a good thing. But that certainly doesn't mean anything. It's going to be up to the voters to take a look at. Presumably, by the time we get to the primary, fewer candidates. People do tend to drop out when they see I can't raise money, or boy, there's too many people, I really can't win this race. But we'll have to see.
Yeah, we do expect to see those numbers shrink, although if you look at CD11, it stayed strong with a number of, I think, 11 candidates up until the end, which is tomorrow.
Right.
We're going to get to that in a minute, but I do just want to say, you mentioned, New Jersey's congressional representatives do not match the diversity of the state, so I would imagine
Absolutely.
voters there are looking at that. We do have 2 Republicans in that race. One just dropped out, I believe, so down to 1.
Right, we're down to 1 there.
Greg Melee.
Right, he's run before. He's run several times. It is a staunchly Democratic district. I think he would have a very difficult time beating whoever the Democrat is.
CD7, that list has already shrunk, but we do see 6 Democrats right there. Who do you see as the top, let's say, 2?
So I think, you've got to look at Rebecca Bennett. She is like kind of Mikey Sherrill 2.0.
Navy helicopter pilot.
Mom of 2, not mom of 4,
Yes.
And she's in the healthcare field, not the legal field, but certainly she's got a very strong resume. She's leading money-wise. She's got almost $2 million that she's raised. But on the other hand, you've got Brian Varela, who is a businessman. He's moved in the state now, moved to Morris County. He's got almost as much, 1.8 million, and he's a much more progressive candidate. So Bennett is kind of the safer, again, in the mode of Mikey Sherrill, more of a moderate, whereas Varela is more of a progressive, you would say, maybe more of an activist. He's called for the impeachment of Kristi Noem, for instance.
Well, this is a district that was redrawn to protect Republicans. Tom Malinowski ran against Kean, couldn't win. We saw Sue Altman run, couldn't win. So let me ask you this. Do you think a moderate plays well? And do you think this seat is flippable, which Democrats seem to believe it is?
I would not have thought this seat was flippable before the November gubernatorial election results. But Governor Mikey Sherrill won that district. So I do think it's flippable. I don't think it's flippable if there is, or I think it would be harder if you had a more progressive candidate. This is a very, parts of this district are very conservative. It goes up into Warren County, out into Hunterdon County, which are very strong Republican areas that do tend to be more conservative. So I'm not sure how Democratic voters are going to feel, though, when they go to the polls. Yeah. It's a primary.
We have some early voting numbers in for District 11. That was former Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill's seat. What do we know so far about who's voted?
So we've got more than 30,000 people have voted. The vast majority of them Democrats, 25,000 plus. We've got 47,000 roughly people, Democrats voting, 47% from Essex County, about 44% from Morris County. That theoretically helps Brendan Gill, who is the Essex County Commissioner and has the Essex County party backing there. But we certainly can't be sure. You know, Ana Lilia Mejia, the progressive activist, certainly could be getting some votes in Newark and other places. And Tom Malinowski could also be getting some votes there.
We should say, if you haven't yet cast your ballot, make sure you drop it into one of the mail ballot boxes in your county, or ask for a postmark, because we do know that the United States Postal Service has changed their postmarking process. But Colleen O'Day, great insight. A whole lot to cover. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Joe.
That's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Joanna Gagos for the entire team here at NJ Spotlight News. Thanks for watching. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.
NJM Insurance Group, serving the insurance needs of residents and businesses for more than 100 years.